A gloved hand raises a pickaxe, preparing to strike the cliff. The tool bites deep into the rock face with a sharp clang. Exhausted, a young man with a heavy pack looks up the steep incline. His companion calls out, naming him Aaron and suggesting they rest soon. She smiles, confident they are close to their next destination. Aaron agrees, the thought of food and rest a welcome one. With renewed effort, he grips the ledge to pull himself over. He struggles to the top, using his pickaxe for one last heave. But his companion's expression suddenly shifts from relief to pure shock. Because of course there's a giant snake waiting for them. It's just that kind of day. But it's not his companion's voice he hears, but a new one, screaming for Saemo to look up. He freezes, his eyes locking onto a pack of reptilian predators perched above. With a grimace, Saemo understands that their rest is indefinitely postponed. The creatures bare their teeth, letting out a guttural roar that echoes through the trees. They immediately give chase, leaping down the cliffside as Saemo scrambles away. He glances back, his face a mask of pure terror as the beasts gain on him. One predator launches itself through the air, closing the distance in a heartbeat. He desperately tries to outrun it, but a stray root catches his foot. Because of course it does. Saemo loses his balance completely, tumbling head over heels down the slope. He lands hard on his back, looking up with the grim acceptance of his fate. The pack of predators closes in, their low growls a promise of violence. One of them lets out a piercing roar, a final declaration before the kill. But a deafening crack echoes through the forest, silencing the beast instantly. A new figure steps into the clearing with calm, measured purpose. It's his companion, revolver smoking, her aim steady and true. The remaining creatures pause, their confidence shattered by the sudden loss. With a final rustle of leaves, the cowed predators retreat back into the shadows. Saemo gets to his feet, praising her for the impossibly precise headshot. She just smiles, brushing off the compliment with a humble laugh. Well, at least dinner's sorted. Saemo suggests they make camp before nightfall. As night falls, a lone campfire burns in the dense forest. The spoils of their near-death experience roast over the flames. Saemo takes a bite, surprised by the tenderness of the meat. His companion agrees it's nothing like the food from Metaseed. He admits that while different, it's certainly a welcome meal. Still, he can't quite shake the unease of eating one of the creatures. He lights a pipe, deciding it's a small price for survival. She reminds him this is how their ancestors once lived. But Saemo can't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for his old life. She offers a comforting smile, understanding his longing for home. She admits that someone she once loved also enjoyed Metaseed food. She never imagined her life would lead her to climbing trees like this. Reaching into her pocket, she pulls out a small, worn box. Across the fire, she presents its contents to Saemo. It's because she can no longer return to her home, Trivania. She then turns the question back on him, asking for his own reasons. Saemo takes a long drag from his pipe, admitting his motivation is anger. Confused, she asks who could possibly be the target of his rage. He exhales slowly, the smoke curling as he reveals the source, his mother. The story then flashes back to his house in Trivania, to a memory of tears. A young Saemo tearfully begs his mother not to leave him. A man, likely his father, tries to comfort the boy, telling him she has work. But Saemo ignores him, clinging desperately to his mother's leg. Her gloved hand gently rests on his head, silencing his cries for a moment. He looks up with a flicker of hope, asking if she's changed her mind. Her hand pulls away, a silent and final answer to his question. She then pinches his cheek, a rather aggressive form of affection. With a grin, she tells him to be strong, reminding him of his family name. She pulls him into a tight hug, speaking of the undiscovered secrets in the world. But the memory twists, ending with her holding a gun to his throat. The memory shifts, showing his mother grabbing a pendant from her belt. With a sharp crack, she snaps the stone talisman clean in two. She holds one half of the broken serpent, a promise yet to be fulfilled. She tells him to use his half to find her when the time is right. The broken piece is then placed gently into his small, waiting hands. Her final words of praise echo as the memory of her fades away. The story jumps forward 8 years to a father hunched over his desk. A teenage Saemo enters the room, sensing his father's deep distress. He sees a letter shaking violently in his father's trembling hand. Saemo takes the document, his own confusion quickly turning to disbelief. His eyes widen in horror as he reads the first few words. A man from Woodpecker Management has come with a message for Saemo. He explains that Saemo's mother has been missing for 5 long years. Saemo's disbelief quickly turns into pure, unadulterated rage. And because of this, she is now officially declared dead. Talk about a brutal HR department. He crushes the letter, unable to accept their cold, bureaucratic logic. He turns to his father, questioning why he's so distraught over the news. but his father remains convinced she's still out there on a mission. Furious, Sayamo turns away, claiming he doesn't care either way. He decides it's simply easier to believe she's gone for good. But his father clutches the letter, vowing to believe she's still alive. He makes a solemn promise that he will definitely find her. Fully packed, Amram waves goodbye, promising to return with proof. A worried Sayamo can only tell his father to be careful on his journey. But Amram brushes it off with a thumbs up, proudly naming himself her husband. Sayamo gives one last warning, urging him to retreat at the first sign of trouble. With a final wave, his father disappears into the unforgiving wilderness. The story then cuts to a grim sight, a dilapidated emergency room. Sayamo bursts through the door, his face etched with panic as he calls for his dad. He finds Amram in a hospital bed, broken and laughing maniacally. So much for a successful rescue mission. Sayamo stands in shock, asking the doctor what's wrong with his father. The doctor explains he was found this way, halfway up a tree. He warns Sayamo that his father could develop falling tree syndrome. You can't make this stuff up. Sayamo grabs his father, demanding to know what happened to his promise of being careful. But Amram just raves that his wife is alive, descending towards the summit. The nonsensical words leave Sayamo utterly stunned and confused. His father thrashes in the bed, screaming that he saw proof before dissolving into laughter. The memory concludes with a grim truth. His father had completely lost his mind. The story returns to the present, with Sayamo now navigating that same treacherous forest. He pauses to catch his breath, setting down his pack with a heavy sigh. The story returns to his father's journey, showing Amram's confusion at a sudden noise. Before him, a colossal wooden golem cracks and groans as it rises from the earth. Amram can only stare in utter disbelief, his mind refusing to accept what he's seeing. The creature towers over him, a living, breathing titan of bark and vine. He turns to flee, his son's desperate plea echoing in his memory. Back in the present, Sayamo asks his companion what she thinks his father truly saw. She looks into the fire, admitting that they have no real way of knowing. She speaks of the forest's many secrets, recalling her own mother's scary stories. Sayamo listens to her tale, a small, knowing smile touching his lips. His companion notices, asking him what he could possibly find so funny. He holds up the pendant, explaining his mother used to say the same thing about secrets. His hand tightens around the metal, the memory still carrying a heavy weight. His companion asks if he means the mother who disappeared so long ago. The two of them are just small specks of light in an overwhelmingly vast forest. Sayamo continues his story, picking up 2 years after his father completely lost his mind. He explains that a letter had arrived at one of the woodpecker divisions. The flashback shows an official confirming the letter was written in his mother's hand. It had somehow found its way back to the woodpecker office in Trivania. The letter stated she was almost at the top, her goal finally within reach. And after 10 years, it ended with a direct message: she was waiting for Sayamo. The official explains the letter was marked with her name, Yegbeth, and a serpent seal. It was found by a woodpecker who had just returned from the forest. The date confirmed it was written that very year, proving she was alive. And just like that, his mother's official death record was declared void. Back in the present, Sayamo finishes his story as smoke curls into the night sky. He admits that this is why he's here, to finally confront her. He wants to know what secret could ever be worth abandoning her own family. He takes one last long drag from his pipe, lost in thought. But his contemplative mood is broken by a sudden dawning realization. He's out of tobacco, the true tragedy of this whole expedition. His companion offers a solution, speaking of those who live higher in the trees. Sayamo can only stare back, completely lost by her cryptic statement. She points to the canopy, suggesting they climb to find him a substitute. A small smile returns to his face as he agrees to the plan. They look up at the impossibly tall trees, their next challenge laid out before them. The dense canopy looms above, a dark and tangled web of branches. Their campfire dies down, its smoke a final wisp against the coming dawn. His companion rests peacefully, gathering strength for the journey ahead. The scene shifts with the gentle ring of a shopkeeper's bell. His companion greets the new day with a cheerful smile, ready for what's next. A woman in an office greets her colleague with a cheerful smile. A man in a work uniform pulls out a chair, commenting on the weather. She notes he's been busy, mentioning a problem with the cable car. He explains that tree No. 666 has overgrown, tangling the transit lines. The report on the table details the incident, naming the trapped worker, Sayamo. She asks if Sayamo had any issues after being rescued from the ordeal. The man laughs, recalling how happy Sayamo was with a month's worth of bread. She agrees, noting the universal appeal of metaseed bread. A man's gotta eat, I guess. His part of the job done, the man heads out to start the repairs. She wishes him luck, warning him to watch out for the Nephilim. The repairman just laughs, doubting the Nephilim even exist as he heads for the door. But his hand pauses on the doorknob, a sudden thought stopping him. Because back at her desk, Ellie seems suddenly flustered by his departure. He turns back, calling out her name to get her attention. He awkwardly asks what time she finishes her shift for the day. Ellie thinks for a moment, figuring she'll be done around 7 or 8. A blush creeps onto his face as he promises to finish his repairs by then. She seizes the opportunity, suggesting dinner and drinks after work. With a brilliant smile, she confirms their date, promising to wait for him. Looks like our boy's got a plan. But the story cuts away to a dark forest where a monstrous entity looms. A voice calls out a familiar name, Aaron. The story returns to the forest, where Aaron slowly wakes from his slumber. He sits up, realizing he's overslept, but Simo reassures him it's fine. With a smile, Simo suggests they continue their journey up the trees. The two companions set off, crossing a rickety bridge through the giant forest. Simo mentions that he's already smoked the rest of their monster meat for the road. Aaron laughs, feeling a little guilty for not helping with the morning chores. But Simo explains that he didn't want to wake him from such a deep sleep. He then reveals Aaron was calling for Ellie, asking if she's the one the ring is for. Aaron looks downcast, wondering if he'll ever see her again to give it to her. Simo is taken aback by his friend's sudden and somber question. Simo tries to lighten the mood, joking that their smoked meat will last for weeks. But Aaron's attention is suddenly caught by something in the distance. He points out a large chest resting precariously on a thick tree branch. Aaron wonders aloud if other woodpeckers might have left it there. Simo's eyes light up, hoping to find some of that coveted metaseed food. He takes a step forward, but his foot snags on a nearly invisible tripwire. A look of confusion crosses his face as he realizes his mistake too late. The wire snaps taut, springing a hidden trap with incredible speed. Simo is violently yanked into the air as Aaron cries out his name in shock. He's dragged away into the dense foliage, disappearing from sight in an instant. Aaron whips around, his face a mask of sudden panic. The trap yanks Simo off his feet, pulling him helplessly into the air. Aaron can only watch in stunned silence, trying to process what just happened. A new figure appears on a branch, calling out to the ensnared woodpeckers. With a confident smirk, she declares this their unlucky day for crossing her. Simo dangles upside down, demanding to know who their ambusher is. The girl scoffs, insulted that a mere woodpecker would dare ask her name. She proudly introduces herself as Rahab of the Buckthorn tribe. Nothing like a dramatic entrance. Aaron, also caught, questions her hostility, believing their people were allies. But Rahab's face twists in anger, calling them liars and rejecting any notion of friendship. Aaron, hanging helplessly, suggests there's been a major misunderstanding. But Simo doubts they can reason with her, noting her stubborn expression. Rahab uses the trap's rope to swing down, landing gracefully on the ground. With a greedy smile, she decides to inspect the contents of their packs. Simo yells in protest as she begins to rifle through his belongings. His supplies spill out onto the forest floor, scattering in the dirt. She looks over the items with disdain, declaring them all useless. But her hand closes around a wrapped bundle, her interest suddenly piqued. Simo panics, yelling that it's their food for the week, but she's already admiring the meat. He grits his teeth in frustration, realizing she has no intention of listening. Hanging upside down, Simo calls out to Aaron, a plan already forming. He gives a coded order, telling Aaron to launch the wyvern on his signal. Rahab continues her looting, pitying them for their lack of metaseed food. With a quick nod, Simo gives the signal to execute their escape plan. He begins a countdown as they both start swinging on the ropes. A grappling hook flies through the air, latching onto a nearby branch, so that's what a wyvern is. Simo uses the momentum to propel himself away from the trap's grip. He and Aaron land deftly on the tree branches, free from the snare. Wasting no time, Simo tells Aaron to cut them loose from the ropes. Aaron crouches, drawing his blade to sever the last of their restraints. With a single slice, the rope snaps, freeing them from the trap. The sound makes Rahab turn, her eyes widening in surprise. Now on solid ground, Simo demands she return their stolen supplies, but she just chomps down on their smoked meat, completely unimpressed. Instead of answering, she gives a sharp tug on another hidden rope. A massive net springs from the forest floor, rising to ensnare them. Caught again, they can only listen as she calls them idiots. Well, she's not wrong. The scene shifts, revealing the sprawling treetop settlement of Buckthorn Village. A strange carved totem sways in the wind, adorned with runes and charms. It stands before a chieftain's tent, hinting at a deeper tribal power. Inside the chieftain's tent, a hand casts bones for a divination. A wave of energy passes over them, revealing a grim omen. The diviner's gnarled hand clenches, sensing a dark future. The shaman, Lord Crow, looks up with a grave warning. They are coming. He speaks of a prophecy, of 2 woodpeckers destined to bring ruin. His followers ask when these harbingers of doom will arrive. Lord Crow parts the tent flap, looking out over his village. With absolute certainty, he declares their arrival will be today. Meanwhile, Rahab pulls taut on the rope binding her new prisoners. She marches Saimo and Aaron through the woods, ignoring their protests. Looks like the prophecy is right on schedule. Rahab announces they're almost at their destination, dragging her prisoners along. She gives a sharp tug on a rope, a confident smirk on her face. A large bell rings out, signaling their approach to the village. With a cheerful wave, she announces her triumphant return. She calls out to someone named Banana Tree, of all things. She then excitedly claims 3 bananas for herself, 1 for each person. Can't argue with that math. A wooden platform begins its descent from the high canopy above. The makeshift elevator lands with a heavy thud on the forest floor. Rahab wastes no time kicking her captives onto the crude lift. Saimo winces in pain as Aaron questions why they're being taken prisoner. Aaron suggests they might find tobacco in the village, which is enough for Saimo to endure the capture. The crude wooden elevator begins its slow, creaking ascent into the canopy. It locks into place with a heavy thud, securing them at the village entrance. A hooded villager greets Rahab, asking if her patrol yielded any good loot. She replies with disappointment, complaining that her captives were poor. But the man's expression shifts to one of dawning horror as he asks a question. He nervously asks if she brought back 2 men, which she proudly confirms. The villager's face contorts in pure terror, realizing the prophecy is coming true. He screams out that the 2 male woodpeckers have finally arrived. Saimo and Aaron can only stand there, completely baffled by the sudden panic they've caused. The villagers rush forward, bows and spears aimed at the newcomers. Rahab can only stare in confusion, completely baffled by the hostile reception. Saimo and Aaron are surrounded by spear points, wondering what they did to deserve this. A ceremonial censer swings from a gnarled wooden staff, filling the air with tension. The shaman, Lord Crow, emerges with his followers, his presence silencing the crowd. He confirms his vision, declaring them the 2 woodpeckers who will bring ruin. One of his followers bows his head, ready to carry out his leader's command. Lord Crow gives the order to throw them in prison. So much for due process. Saimo looks on in shock as Aaron begins to plead their case. Aaron desperately tries to explain that this is all just a big misunderstanding. Lord Crow declares their grim fate. They will be sacrifices for the great trees. The 2 are thrown into a wooden cage, high in the canopy under a single guard's watch. Saimo grips the bars, screaming for them to be released this instant. He struggles in vain against the sturdy cage as Aaron tells him it's no use. Aaron reflects that this overt hostility is strange, even for the less friendly tribes. Their captor, Rahab, arrives with a cheerful wave to take over guard duty. The previous guard confirms it's her shift, leaving the prisoners in her care. Saimo immediately recognizes her, his fury reignited as he grabs the bars. She leans in to taunt them, asking if they're hurt. Her bedside manner could use some work. He demands to know what they did to deserve this, yelling that they don't have time. Rahab apologizes, saying she only meant to have a little fun with them. But she explains that she's bound by the orders of her leader, Lord Crow. Saimo's insult is cut short as Rahab fiercely defends her shaman's name. She snaps back, yelling that they know nothing about her or her tribe. Aaron, ever the voice of reason, calmly asks her to tell them about Lord Crow. Her anger fades as she describes how Lord Crow has saved their tribe time and again. He heals the sick and can even see the future, a true protector of his people. She admits she doesn't understand the prophecy, but her faith in him is absolute. Talk about a dedicated follower. Saimo pushes back, asking if her loyalty extends to dying on his command. With a chilling smile, she confirms that she would, without a moment's hesitation. Aaron presses her, asking why she has such blind faith in him. Rahab simply takes a stick and begins to draw in the dirt. She explains that without Lord Crow, she wouldn't even be alive today. He found her and her sister, abandoned children of woodpeckers, and raised them. She tells them of the monstrous ghost mantises that plague the nearby woods. For years, the creatures raided their village, leaving a trail of death. But it was Lord Crow's sorcery that finally drove the beasts away for good. Her story turns bitter as she recalls her sister falling for a woodpecker. Lord Crow saw it as the devil's work, blaming himself as more orphans left. Sounds like a bit of a control freak, if you ask me. Now, she is the only one left and she vows to never betray him. But Saimo listens with suspicion, sensing a flaw in her story about the ghost mantises. Rahab admits she only shared so much because they're going to die tomorrow anyway. Samo retorts that they wouldn't be in this position if she hadn't captured them. She offers a surprisingly genuine apology for her part in their grim fate. As a consolation, she offers to grant them one last wish before the end. You know, standard executioner hospitality. The night passes and the first rays of dawn break through the dense canopy. Rahab looks up, announcing that their final day has officially begun. She leaves them with a final instruction: think carefully about what they want. A new guard arrives, informing them that the time for the ritual has come. Bound and paraded through the village, Samo can only wonder how it all went so wrong. Aaron whispers to Samo, admitting the story about Lord Crow doesn't sit right. Samo agrees, finding the whole tale of the ghost mantises far too convenient. The villagers murmur amongst themselves, calling the two the devil's children. A ceremonial censer swings, filling the air with a thick, aromatic smoke. Lord Crow raises his staff, officially beginning the sacrificial ceremony. He begins a low chant, his words lost in the billowing clouds of incense. The smoke quickly envelops the area, obscuring everything from view. But Samo catches a whiff of the scent, his eyes widening in recognition. The memory of Rahab's story resurfaces, of her sister leaving with a woodpecker, and of Lord Crow blaming the devil as more orphans abandoned his tribe. The pieces click into place and Samo realizes the truth behind the sorcery. He screams at the villagers that they're being tricked, demanding to know what happened to the other orphans. He exposes Lord Crow's secret. There's no magic, just incense and food to control the ghost mantises. Samo wagers their lives on it, yelling that the creatures will appear any second. As if on cue, the thick smoke begins to part, revealing a shape in the trees. A massive, scythe-like leg emerges from the haze, confirming his worst fears. The monstrous form of the ghost mantis slowly materializes from the smoke. It lands on a branch above, its presence sending a wave of panic through the crowd. But Lord Crow calmly tells them not to fear, calling the beast an envoy for the trees. Sure, an envoy with giant pincers. The shaman begins his chant, putting on a show for his followers as the mantis watches. The villagers watch in awe, convinced Lord Crow has tamed the beast. But Samo exposes the truth. He's only controlling it with incense and sacrifices. He calls out to Rahab, revealing that ghost mantises are solitary hunters. Aaron reminds her of her promise to grant them one final wish. Their request is simple: destroy the shaman's incense burner. Lord Crow tries to guilt her, reminding her of the debt she owes him. A classic villain move. Samo argues that a true sorcerer wouldn't need such a cheap trick. Torn between loyalty and the truth, Rahab covers her ears in turmoil. As she hesitates, the ghost mantis raises its deadly scythes. Aaron pleads with her one last time, their lives hanging in the balance. Samo screams the final, painful truth. Lord Crow is the reason she lost her sister. Her weapon, a sharp scythe, flies through the air with deadly purpose. It strikes the shaman's censer with a sharp clang, shattering his control. The blade embeds itself deep into a nearby tree, its job now complete. The ornate burner cracks open, its magical smoke finally dissipating. Rahab stands defiant, declaring that she will be the one to judge the truth. Lord Crow seethes with rage, realizing his carefully crafted illusion is broken. The last of the incense pours out, its calming effect on the beast now gone. The faces of Rahab, Samo, and Aaron reflect pure shock in the broken metal. Because now the ghost mantis is free from its trance, and it does not look happy. With a piercing shriek, the ghost mantis descends upon the terrified villagers. It lashes out indiscriminately, its bladed limbs tearing through the crowd. The beast begins to feed, its dark silhouette a vision of pure carnage. Its face is splattered with gore, a mindless predator in a feeding frenzy. Aaron watches in horror, realizing this isn't a hunt, but an absolute massacre. Still bound to the post, Saimo knows they're next if they can't break free. But Rahab suddenly appears, landing beside them on the sacrificial platform. She yells at them to escape, urging them to flee the chaos she helped create. Samo fires back, reminding her whose fault it is they're tied up. He's not wrong. Wasting no more time, she slices through their ropes with a single clean cut. Now free from the post, Samo and Aaron are still bound together. Rahab yells at them to figure out their own escape, urging them to hurry. The villagers rally, lighting their arrows with a strange smoking substance. On command, they let loose a volley of arrows at the rampaging beast. The projectiles explode on impact, engulfing the mantis in smoke and fire. The creature recoils from the blast, staggering back into a nearby tree. The force of the impact sends a tremor through the platform, knocking Samo off balance. He and Aaron are thrown to the ground, the chaos escalating around them. But the smoke clears to reveal the mantis is completely unharmed. So much for that plan. It raises its bladed limbs, preparing to unleash another wave of destruction. The beast tears through the village, its scythes a blur of bloody carnage. Eren falls to his knees, his mind shutting down at the sheer horror of the massacre. The ghost mantis stands triumphant over the fallen, a monster unleashed. His eyes are wide with terror, his heart pounding in his chest. Samo turns, realizing his friend is completely frozen in shock. He screams at Eren to get it together, warning him not to lose control here. Rahab echoes the sentiment, yelling for them to get moving and escape. But Eren can only apologize, his voice trembling as he succumbs to the pressure. In a shocking move, he deliberately presses his finger into his own eye. Dark tendrils erupt from his body as he begins to transform. Well, that's one way to deal with stress. Rahab can only stare in disbelief, unable to process what she's seeing. But Samo knows exactly what this is, cursing the terrible timing. Dark, bark-like armor erupts from Eren's skin, twisting around his hand. The strange growth spreads with unnatural speed, encasing his entire body. He stands fully transformed, a monstrous figure of bark and bone. Samo explains to Rahab that his friend is far from an ordinary man. He warns that if Eren loses control, he'll attack everything in sight. Through the monstrous helm, Eren admits his sanity is already slipping away. The ghost mantis pauses its slaughter, turning to face this new challenger. Without a moment's hesitation, the transformed Eren launches himself into battle. Eren in his monstrous form lands a devastating blow on the ghost mantis. The creature's exoskeleton cracks under the sheer force of the impact. More jagged armor erupts from his back as his transformation intensifies. He follows up with a sweeping strike, severing the mantis's bladed limbs. With terrifying strength, he grabs the beast's head in a crushing grip. He tears the monster apart, ending the battle in a shower of gore. The monstrous armor begins to crack and fall away, revealing an exhausted Eren. Rahab can only stare in disbelief, stunned by how easily he dispatched the beast. The villagers emerge, relieved the mantis is dead but confused about their shaman's fate. But the fight isn't over as the transformed Eren now turns his attention to Samo. Samo screams at the villagers, warning them to run for their lives. The monstrous Eren lunges forward, his new target the terrified crowd. His tendrils lash out, impaling the fleeing villagers without mercy. The rampage continues, a brutal and indiscriminate display of power. Samo narrowly dodges a strike, scrambling to stay one step ahead. Rahab intercepts the attack, demanding to know how to stop this monster. Samo yells out a plan. She needs to create a diversion for him. With a determined look, Rahab agrees to the risky maneuver. No time for a committee meeting, I guess. She leaps forward, calling out to draw the creature's full attention. The transformed Eren turns, his gaze now locked onto his new challenger. Rahab leaps into action, gracefully dodging the flurry of deadly tendrils. The monstrous helm on Eren's face cracks and shifts, a sign of his unstable power. As the monster lands, Samo takes cover, waiting for his moment to strike. With the diversion in place, Samo sprints from his hiding spot, closing the distance. He slams into his friend's monstrous form, trying to break through the rage. Samo screams his friend's name, desperately trying to reach the man inside the monster. He reminds Eren of his promise to find a cure for this very condition. He pleads with him to remember Ellie, to fight back for the woman he loves. The words seem to hit their mark as the dark armor begins to shatter and fall away. The transformation recedes, leaving a dazed and exhausted Eren in its wake. Looks like the power of love wins again. Samo finally collapses, catching his breath after pulling his friend back from the brink. He looks up at the surviving villagers, calling them the true monsters of this story. A wounded villager screams for them to leave, still clinging to Lord Crow's prophecy. Samo yells back, exposing the shaman as a con man who fed orphans to the mantis. But the villager retorts that the beast only went wild because Rahab broke the censor. He gestures to the fallen, claiming their village was peaceful before the two arrived. The man then turns on Rahab, questioning how she could betray their so-called savior. He cries out in despair, wondering how they'll possibly survive without Lord Crow. Guess they'll have to find a new cult leader. The scene shifts, showing Samo and Eren walking away from the devastated village. Samo glances back at his friend, asking if he's all right after his violent transformation. Eren confirms that Samo did, in fact, save him from losing control. Samo complains that they barely survived, all for a simple tobacco run. Eren just sighs, accepting that their journey took a wildly unexpected turn. But Samo's attention is drawn elsewhere, asking why a certain someone is following them. Rahab plays it cool, claiming she's just heading in the same direction. Samo calls her bluff, noting she's been tailing them for hours, but she just retorts that she's been exiled. She then holds out a wrapped bundle, offering it to them as a gift. Samo takes it, asking what it is, and she reminds him of his quest for tobacco. He opens it to find a pouch of herbs, which she proudly calls her village's finest. Guess the trip wasn't a total bust. Aaron whispers to Saemo, pointing out the obvious. She wants to join them. Saemo lays down the ground rules. She can come, but he'll ditch her if she's a pain. Their new dynamic is immediately chaotic, with Rahab boasting and Simo complaining. But elsewhere in the forest, a gnarled wooden hand reaches out from the shadows. A cloaked figure watches from a distance, his antlered helm a dark silhouette. He turns to leave, melting back into the dense undergrowth without a sound. But a sudden noise stops him cold, his cover apparently blown. A powerful blow sends him staggering, his helmet knocked clean off his head. A new figure steps into the clearing, their presence heavy and deliberate. The attacker reveals the shaman's true name, Orive, or as he's now known, Crow. Lord Crow looks up, his scarred face twisted in shock as he demands his assailant's identity. The attacker is a woman in red, flanked by a gas-masked brute. She reveals they were sent by Lord Ramez to eliminate him. She takes a drag from her pipe, chiding him for his recent failures. The brute stammers that it's all for Lord Ramez before ordering Crow to die. Lord Crow sneers, identifying them as lackeys of this so-called Ramez. He vows that their plans are about to fall spectacularly apart. With a sudden burst of energy, he unleashes a massive smokescreen. The thick cloud of smoke completely obscures their vision in an instant. The woman sighs, admitting their target has managed to escape. So much for a quick assassination. Her companion points upwards, guessing Crow fled into the trees and vowing to pursue. A wicked smirk crosses her face as she accepts this will be a long hunt. The newly formed trio continues their journey through the massive trees. But Aaron seems troubled, asking Saemo if he's truly okay with all this. Saemo is confused, unsure what his friend is referring to. Aaron clarifies, worried about his monstrous nature and the shaman's prophecy. But Saemo dismisses the prophecy, saying he was always ready for a hard road. He reassures his friend that to him he's still just Aaron. Their conversation is cut short as Rahab calls out from ahead. Looks like she's actually useful. Saemo realizes she's found a sign leading them to the woodpecker base camp. They soon arrive at Yurimok, a sprawling settlement built into the trees. Aaron can only stare in awe, having only heard stories of this place. Rahab is immediately impressed by the settlement, calling it rather shiny. Saemo suggests they find a saloon to rest before getting supplies tomorrow. They soon find themselves outside a noisy establishment called the Sleeping Warden. Inside, the saloon is bustling with woodpeckers drinking and playing cards. The trio steps through the door, a new set of faces in a familiar crowd. A young barmaid looks up from her work, her attention caught by the newcomers. A man in a full suit of armor is called out by name, Idro. He's promptly scolded by his boss for slacking off instead of working. The barmaid chimes in, yelling at him to stop playing cards and do his job. Nothing like a bit of workplace drama. Rahab watches the argument unfold with a wide, amused grin. The saloon owner pulls his money back, chiding Idro for acting like he runs the place. He turns out to be the bartender, welcoming the trio with a gruff but professional demeanor. A massive wooden mug of ale is placed before them, filled to the brim. Saemo doesn't hesitate, downing the entire drink in a few massive gulps. He slams the empty mug down as the bartender notes he must have had a rough journey. The man asks if this is their first time climbing, noting their unfamiliar faces. Aaron smiles sheepishly, admitting they're inexperienced and have faced many hardships. Rahab loudly complains about babysitting newbies, much to Aaron's visible annoyance. The bartender then asks a more serious question. What reason do they have for climbing? Saemo simply smiles, claiming they just want to see what it's like at the top. The other patrons at the table look over, their expressions utterly unimpressed. Saemo's answer is met with a sudden burst of derisive laughter from the veterans. But a younger woodpecker stands up, demanding to know what's so funny. One of the men cynically asks what they'll even do if they reach the top. The young man blurts out his own reason, to find his mother who went missing. Another climber puts an arm around him, mocking his search for a dead woman. The kid shoves him off, angrily demanding to know the man's own motivation. The scarred woodpecker just smirks, admitting he's only in it for the money. At least he's honest about it. The young man is appalled, questioning if profit is all that matters to them. The veteran scoffs, telling the kid it's time to grow up and face reality. A metal hand clenches the veteran's shoulder, stopping him cold. The armored man, Idro, tells the drunkard to call it a night. He then addresses the entire bar, demanding they show each other some respect. But the cynical climber just scoffs, turning away from the lecture. The young man turns to Saemo, telling him not to mind the bitter veterans. Idro apologizes for the man's behavior, offering to buy them all around. He tries to lighten the mood, asking if they're up for a game of cards. The young man asks Saimo if his mother was also searching for the tree's secrets. Idro takes a drag from his pipe, asking the kid for his mother's name. The boy holds up a familiar pendant, revealing his mother's name, Yegbeth. Well, this just got complicated. Idro's eyes lock onto the pendant, realizing the young man is Yegbeth's son. He lets out a hearty laugh, confirming that of course he knew her. He holds up a card bearing her image, praising her as an unforgettable woodpecker. The bartender adds that she was a romantic, always chasing the dream of the summit. But he warns the young man that the path only gets more difficult from here. Idro reveals a card of a Nephilim, declaring it the boy's destiny to face them. The story cuts away to a lone worker operating a creaking cable car lift. He looks uneasy, trying to convince himself that today will be just another day. He takes a seat, a sense of dread washing over him as he prepares for the worst. But the memory of a woman's smile gives him the strength to carry on. Oh, how sweet. He's determined to be the one who protects that smile. With his shift underway, he hopes to finish in time to meet Ellie. He adjusts his helmet, trying to focus on the task at hand. But a horrifying crack echoes through the trees, freezing him in place. A cold dread washes over him, a feeling he's never known before, because looming before him is a monstrous entity of writhing vines. Looks like the Nephilim might be real after all. He's paralyzed by fear, his body refusing to obey his commands. The creature's tendrils lash out, closing the distance in an instant. He's quickly ensnared, wrapped in a crushing grip with no hope of escape. The beast lifts him into the air, its gaping maw opening wide for a meal. He can only wonder if this is the end, a meaningless death in the dark. But the story cuts away to an official report, a far more sanitized version of events. Ellie refuses to accept it, arguing that the man showed no signs of illness. But the investigator points to the file, claiming Aaron took his own life. She desperately explains that they had a date planned for that very night. The official addresses her by name, his tone cold and dismissive. He tells her to drop the case, declaring the investigation officially closed. With a final warning, he threatens to have her arrested if she persists. So much for due process. Elsewhere, Saimo hears the news of Aaron's supposed condition, unable to believe it. He knows something is wrong, that the official story is a rushed and convenient lie. He can't accept this outcome, refusing to believe the official report. Lost in thought, he wanders the city streets until something stops him. A flyer for a detective agency promises to find missing loved ones. With a new sense of purpose, he follows the address into the city's underbelly. The path leads him up a set of grimy, forgotten stairs. He makes his way down a derelict hallway littered with debris. He finally arrives at a door marked "Lost and Found," hoping this is the place. But the sketchy location gives him pause, a shiver running down his spine. Not exactly Scotland Yard, is it? Taking a deep breath, he reaches for the doorknob, his resolve firm. He cautiously pushes the door open, calling out into the dim office. The office is a complete mess, and he wonders if anyone is even here. But a sudden rustling from a pile of junk catches his attention. He lets out a yelp as a figure suddenly rises from the debris. The man takes a long swig from a bottle, clearly having a rough morning. He introduces himself as the proprietor, offering a seat to customers but not creditors. The detective mistakes him for a woman, but correctly guesses he's here to find someone. Guess the long hair is throwing him off. As the detective pours a drink, Saimo confirms that's exactly why he's here. He listens to the official story: suicide caused by fallen tree syndrome. But Saimo isn't convinced, demanding to see the body for proof. The detective asks for a timeline, and Saimo reveals it's been a month since Aaron's death. The detective considers the timeline, shuffling through a mountain of paperwork. He pulls out a binder from FR Industries, announcing he's found something. Saimo looks on, confused by the official-looking document. The man calls it a list of removed items, much to Saimo's shock. He finds a file with a familiar face, asking Saimo to confirm it's Aaron. He hands over the report, telling Saimo the information is directly from the source. Saimo reads the impossible truth. The suicide was a cover-up and Aaron is alive. He looks up, his voice trembling as he asks if his friend is truly alive. The detective confirms it, at least for now. Nothing like a little ambiguity to keep things interesting. But his expression darkens as this case reminds him of other, similar disappearances. The detective's warning hangs in the air, a grim premonition of Aaron's fate. But the story snaps back to the present, as Rahab greets the new day with a massive yawn. Aaron smiles, returning her cheerful greeting as the sun rises over the camp. Saimo, however, is not having a good morning, nursing a killer hangover from the night before. Rahab teases him about his low tolerance as Aaron admits they all went a little too hard. A flashback shows the trio raising their mugs, celebrating their arrival at the base camp. The night devolved into a raucous party, with everyone singing songs of the climb. Looks like a good time was had by all. Aaron laughs, admitting it's a miracle they didn't get into even more trouble. But a voice calls out, breaking their morning after reflections. It's the cynical veteran from the bar, asking if they're already heading out. He offers a surprisingly sincere apology for his drunken words the night before. As a peace offering, he holds out 3 cans of precious metaseed food. Aaron accepts the gift, a little taken aback by the man's change of heart. The veteran admits that he too once shared their dream of reaching the summit. Aaron smiles, genuinely hoping the man's dreams might one day be realized. The climber laughs, a bit embarrassed by this rare moment of vulnerability. With a final wave, he wishes them well, warning them of the dangers ahead. A hand closes a pack, signaling that it's finally time for them to move on. The trio stands united, ready to begin the true climb toward the top. The story flashes back, explaining how humanity came to live in these giant trees after the world fell to ruin, facing the constant threat of hunger. The old world's crops and livestock couldn't survive in the canopy, withering away. As civilization crumbled, a single invention saved humanity from starvation. It was a miraculous plant known only as the metaseed. This grain could be cultivated on the infertile trees, providing all needed nutrients. The company that developed it, PR Industries, became known as the pain remover. Catchy. They soon stood at the center of this new world, controlling the food supply. Back in the present, Aaron asks Samo about the ruins they're approaching. Samo consults his map, confirming that they're on the right track. He explains that according to their route, they should be reaching the first ruins soon. Aaron's face lights up, excited to finally see a remnant of the past. Aaron hopes they might find some rare artifacts from the old world. But Samo is less optimistic, having heard the ruins were picked clean a decade ago. He explains that it's now just a safe rest stop, much to his relief. They finally arrive at the first ruins, a crumbling building swallowed by the trees. The trio can only stare, stunned by the sheer scale of the ancient structure. They cautiously make their way inside, navigating the rubble and overgrowth. Rahab is impressed, noting how much larger the building is on the inside. Aaron wonders aloud about the kind of lives people from the old world once lived. With a grin, Rahab eagerly urges them to explore deeper into the ruins. Famous last words. Guided by a single lantern, they descend into the building's dark, silent depths. Aaron leads the way, his lantern cutting through the oppressive darkness. They step through a collapsed wall, entering a much larger chamber. But Aaron suddenly holds up a hand, bringing their exploration to a halt. Rahab asks what he's found, her usual bravado replaced with caution. The lantern's light reveals their discovery, a wall covered in ancient text. Aaron stares in awe, recognizing the script as a long-lost language. But Samo begins to read aloud, his voice echoing in the silent ruin. His friends turn in shock, questioning how he can understand the script. He explains that it was his mother who taught him this forgotten tongue. He turns back to the wall, wondering why such a grim message was left here. Rahab leans in, impatiently urging Samo to read the rest of the story. The text describes a great famine, forcing people to kill and steal to survive. The trio stands in silence, absorbing the grim history of their ancestors. Samo's voice trembles as he reads about their desperate attempts to delay the end. But a crucial part of the message has been deliberately scratched out. The final words are a confession, a plea for future generations to never forgive them. Aaron realizes this must have been written before the metaseed saved humanity. Rahab just shrugs, saying you have to eat to survive, can't argue with that logic. But a deep, booming sound echoes from the darkness as strange shadows emerge. A cold shiver runs down Samo's spine, his face contorting in sudden terror. He continues to read, the words speaking of a shared sin and a lack of forgiveness. But at the very bottom, a signature is carved into the stone, Yegbeth. Samo's eyes widen in disbelief, recognizing the name of the famous woodpecker. The young man from the saloon confirms the impossible. The author was his mother. Rahab points out that thick vines are still obscuring part of the wall. Without a moment's hesitation, she swings her massive scythe to clear them. She tears at the ancient roots, trying to reveal whatever secrets lie beneath. But her efforts are met with a sudden, unexpected cracking sound. The entire wall begins to fracture, its structural integrity completely compromised. Well, so much for historical preservation. Saimo screams in terror as the floor beneath them begins to rumble and collapse. Aaron screams for them to run as the ancient chamber comes down around them. The floor gives way completely, sending the trio plummeting into the abyss below. Their only source of light, the lantern, shatters against the rubble, leaving them in total darkness. In the pitch black, Aaron calls out to his friends, but Rahab quickly silences him, whispering about a foul stench. A strange noise echoes through the darkness, and the group is left blind and disoriented. A sudden red light illuminates the cavern, revealing they are surrounded by monstrous creatures. It was Samo who lit a flare, casting a desperate glow on their terrifying situation. He realizes they've fallen into a nest of bladed flying ants, and they are most certainly not alone. The creatures hiss and stir, their sharp mandibles clicking in the dim red light. Samo looks up at the hole in the ceiling, realizing just how far they've fallen from safety. Samo realizes the soft ground makes their usual escape methods completely useless. Aaron's hand begins to tremble, the familiar grip of fear taking hold. He struggles to catch his breath, his panic rising in the face of the swarming monsters. Samo's voice cuts through the terror, calling his friend's name to snap him out of it. He tells Aaron to listen closely, his tone leaving no room for argument. He promises that if they follow his lead, they'll all make it out of this alive. He spotted a cave entrance, a faint breeze signaling a path to the outside. He gives the order to run on his signal, asking Rahab if she's prepared. Rahab just grins, telling him not to worry about her. She was born ready for this. Samo grips his revolver, his fingers steady as he prepares to start the chaos. The bladed flying ants stir, their mandibles clicking with a hungry sound. Samo gives the signal, and the trio makes a desperate break for the cave. Rahab leads the charge, her scythe carving a path through the swarming insects. Guess she's their designated pest control. Aaron provides covering fire, his rifle blasting away at the encroaching horde. His shots find their mark, tearing through the creature's tough exoskeleton, but a razor-sharp limb slashes out, knocking his weapon from his grasp. He stumbles back in terror as one of the massive beasts lunges forward. Samo screams from the safety of the cave, urging his friend to keep moving. Aaron and Rahab dive into the tunnel just as Samo lays down more covering fire. But looking back, he realizes the swarm is endless, yelling for them to run. Rahab screams that they've reached the end of the tunnel, urging the others forward. They emerge onto a natural bridge, finally escaping the suffocating darkness of the nest. Samo breathes a sigh of relief, realizing they've made it back to the open air. But Rahab looks back, wondering why the swarm of creatures suddenly stopped following them. A deep, ominous rumbling begins to echo from the blackness of the cave. The sound erupts into a deafening roar, shaking the very air around them. Aaron's voice trembles as he asks what could have possibly made that sound. A cold dread washes over Samo, who knows it can't be anything good. Rahab screams a warning, confirming their worst fears: something is coming. A monstrous armored beast smashes through the cave mouth, revealing the nest's true master. Well, so much for a clean getaway. With a desperate scream, Samo signals the retreat as the monster gives chase. They sprint across the stone bridge, the colossal beast hot on their heels. He spots a staircase, their only hope for escape from this death trap. The creature's bladed leg smashes down, narrowly missing Aaron as he scrambles away. Samo grips his rifle, knowing he has only a single bullet left in the chamber. His friends call for him to hurry, their own escape far from certain. But Samo stands his ground, raising his weapon for one last, desperate shot. He fires, not at the beast, but at the crumbling ceiling directly above it. The shot shatters the ancient stone, sending tons of rubble plummeting down. The massive beast is crushed beneath the debris in a shower of gore. Well, that's one way to solve an insect problem. Samo collapses to the ground, admitting the ordeal just took 10 years off his life. Aaron rushes over, his voice filled with concern for his friend's well-being. Samo waves it off, claiming he's just tired and checking if they're both unharmed. Aaron thanks him, admitting they would have all died if not for his quick thinking. But their relief is short-lived, as Samo realizes they still need to find a way out. They look around the dark cavern, with Rahab noting they're even deeper in the ruins now. Samo compares the place to a labyrinth, guessing they took a wrong turn somewhere. You don't say, but Aaron's attention is suddenly caught by something in the distance. He points ahead, spotting a faint light seeping through a crack in the rock. But as they move forward, Rahab stops them, a sudden feeling of danger washing over her. She admits she can't explain it, but the air in this cavern feels strangely wrong. The trio cautiously peers around the corner, their faces etched with apprehension. But Saimo's eyes widen in sudden, horrified recognition of what lies ahead. Before them is a massive, web-like structure of bone and sinew. Its tendrils end in razor-sharp points, a clear and deadly warning. And on a throne of bone sits the queen of the nest, a humanoid insectoid. She calmly announces it's been centuries since she last saw a living human. Well, that's not ominous at all, Saimo stammers in disbelief, questioning if the creature actually spoke. Aaron clutches his head, realizing her voice is echoing directly inside their minds. Rahab screams in agony, demanding the psychic intruder get out of her head. Saimo tries to steady Rahab, yelling at her to fight the psychic assault. The queen seems amused by Rahab's resistance, calling her a rude child. A sudden force throws them back, the queen's power a tangible wave. Saimo realizes they're surrounded, his patience for giant insects officially gone. But the queen just lets out a soft, knowing laugh, completely in control. She then turns her attention to Saimo, asking about his search for the head of the snake. The words trigger a memory of a broken pendant, one bearing a snake's image. The psychic intrusion intensifies, making it impossible for Saimo to think clearly. Her gaze then falls on Eren, revealing she knows about the seed in his eye. She offers a chilling prophecy. The truth he seeks will only lead him to despair. Eren is stunned, demanding to know how she's aware of his condition. The queen calmly confirms that of course she knows everything. She claims to exist beyond time, aware of all that's happened since the trees grew. The trio can only stare, realizing she might hold the answers they've been searching for. But Rahab has had enough of the cryptic talk, raising her weapon to fight. The queen just smiles, calling the girl's defiance pure ignorance. With a simple snap of her fingers, she unleashes her true power. A wave of psychic energy washes over Rahab, her mind under direct assault. Her vision shatters, her very perception of reality torn apart by the queen's attack. She's left completely paralyzed, her eyes wide with a terror she's never known. Eren screams out Rahab's name, demanding to know what the queen has done. The queen calmly explains she only gave the girl a small taste of true fear. She then turns to the two men, offering to answer the questions they seek. Saimo can hardly believe it, the answers to their entire journey within reach. But of course such knowledge comes with a price. Nothing is ever free. As her monstrous children stir, the queen reveals the cost of her wisdom. The price for their answers is the life of their new, insolent companion. Eren is horrified, refusing to accept such a terrible bargain. The queen presses them, questioning if a new friend's life is truly so valuable. She asks if it's more important than the truth that has driven them this far. But Saimo steps forward, his desperation overriding his friend's desperate warning. The queen's psychic assault digs deep, unearthing a painful memory of his mother. He remembers begging her not to leave, the raw emotion of a child's plea. The queen's voice echoes in his mind, beckoning him closer to the truth. He's pulled into the memory, helpless against the tide of his own past. The vision shows him as a young boy, crying out for the woman who left him. He recalls her final words, a promise of understanding tied to a broken pendant. She entrusted him with the snake emblem, a key to finding her one day. He can only watch as she turns her back, walking away into the unknown. The memory fades, leaving only the image of her disappearing into the darkness. The memory fades, leaving him with the image of his mother walking away. The snake pendant cracks, a symbol of the broken promise that has defined his life. She offers a final cryptic smile before disappearing into the darkness forever. But Eren's voice cuts through the vision, screaming for Saimo to snap out of it. He grits his teeth, refusing to let his friend fall for the queen's twisted deal. In a blur of motion, Eren lunges past his mesmerized friend, taking matters into his own hands. He draws his blade, his eyes locked on the true enemy in the chamber. He roars at the queen, questioning what right she has to put a price on a human life. Meanwhile, Rahab just laughs, her mind cracking under the psychic strain. Guess that's one way to cope. The queen notes that he has chosen his destiny, her bladed limb poised to strike. The vision shifts to a young Saimo, his face set with grim determination. The queen warns them of an uncontrollable fate, calling them harbingers of ruin. But the scene cuts away, back to the familiar sign of the Sleeping Warden saloon. Two figures arrive, the woman in red and her gas-masked enforcer. A close-up reveals their allegiance, the infamous PR Industries. Their heavy boots echo through the settlement, a sign of trouble to come. Inside the saloon, the once lively atmosphere has turned cold and hostile. The patrons watch in silence, their fear a tangible presence in the room. Even the barmaid looks up, her expression a mix of shock and apprehension. Guess happy hour is officially over. The bartender addresses the woman, questioning why someone of her status is here. The woman in red addresses someone off-screen, calling him Idro. The bartender demands to know what brings the intelligence agency to his saloon. She claims she's just checking on an old friend, casually preparing her pipe. But the bartender isn't fooled, telling her to drop the act and state her business. She reveals her first target, a man in black robes by the name of Orev. And her second? Two young woodpeckers named Saimo and Eren, much to the bartender's shock. She offers a simple deal. Tell her everything and they can all go back to their lives. But the bartender scoffs, refusing to share anything with the likes of them. Her gas-masked brute responds with a devastating punch, ending the conversation. Well, that escalated quickly. The bartender is left coughing up blood, a brutal warning against defiance. The gas-masked brute looms over the scene, a silent and brutal enforcer. The young barmaid screams out Idro's name, her face a mask of terror. Enraged, the other woodpeckers grab their weapons to defend their friend. But the woman in red is faster, firing 2 warning shots into the air. The bullets shatter their mugs, a clear and violent message to stand down. She warns them that her next shots won't be aimed at their drinks. Guess the open bar is closed. Idro struggles to his feet, telling her to leave his customers out of this. Her brute Tusk eagerly asks to join the fun, but she holds him back. She needs Idro alive to talk, calmly asking if he's ready to cooperate. But Idro spits defiance, refusing to betray the woodpeckers to the dogs of PR Industries. The barmaid Miriam begs Idro to stay alive, her voice filled with fear, but Idro cuts her off, declaring, "This is a matter of principle, not survival." The woman in red seems to agree, noting that Idro at least understands the situation. She reminds him of his past, of being exiled from Trivania after losing his arms. Idro coughs up more blood, the brutal punch having taken its toll. She reveals that Lord Ramez showed him mercy by only taking his limbs back then, but her cold gaze promises that this time there will be no such mercy. With a defiant sound, Idro prepares to make his move. Looks like he's not the negotiating type. He lunges forward, roaring that her threats mean nothing to him. The woman just stares back, unimpressed by his predictable defiance. But his charge is stopped short as Tusk intercepts him with brutal force. The brute eagerly asks his boss, Manhwa, if he can finally play. She considers his request, deciding a little fun should be fine. Tusk clarifies, asking if he has permission to kill their target. Guess his idea of fun is pretty straightforward. With a cold, unsettling smile, Manhwa gives the order to end Idro's life. Idro's face contorts in horror, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Tusk lets out a gleeful laugh, activating a strange canister on his back. A purple liquid is injected directly into his veins, a chemical enhancement. His muscles immediately swell, the drug coursing through his system. With a guttural roar, the enforcer's body transforms, ready for the kill. Tusk's enhanced grip shatters Idro's prosthetic arm with a sickening crack. Idro coughs up blood, his defiance turning to horror as his defenses crumble. A devastating blow from the brute sends pieces of armor flying across the room. Idro is thrown back, his metal arms completely destroyed by the overwhelming force. Tusk looks at his own hands, surprised and delighted by his newfound strength. A muffled, childish laugh echoes from behind the brute's gas mask. He clenches his fist, declaring that smashing things is his favorite pastime. Guess he's a simple man with simple pleasures. Beaten and broken, Idro resigns himself to his fate, believing this is the end. But at the last second, he screams out that he'll tell them everything they want. The barmaid rushes to his side, begging them to stop, confirming he'll talk. Manhwa looks on, unimpressed, but gives the order for him to talk. Idro tries to refuse, coughing up blood as he warns against cooperating. But Miriam pleads with him, insisting that his survival is what matters most. She reveals that Samo, Aaron, and Rahab headed for the first ruins days ago. She adds that a man in black was also spotted nearby, searching for the group. Manhwa processes the information, realizing all her targets are in one place. With a new lead, she calls off her brute, declaring that playtime is over. She gives Idro a final chilling warning that he only lives because his employee talked. After they leave, Idro confronts Miriam, asking why she sold out Samo. The young barmaid can only look away, ashamed and terrified of what she's done. Miriam holds Idro, who insists that what matters is that everyone survived the ordeal. The story cuts to a new trio of climbers, whose leader notes their journey is going smoother than expected. The youngest of the group dreams of finding artifacts to sell to PR Industries for a massive payday. But their leader warns them not to get complacent, reminding them of rumors about a stalker in the area. One of his companions just scoffs, confidently boasting that their party is in Vinci. His words are cut short as a projectile pierces his throat in a spray of blood. So much for being invincible. The young woman can only stare in utter shock, her face pale with terror. Their leader immediately draws his weapon, screaming for them to get down as they're under attack. She rushes to her fallen friend's side, desperately trying to stop the bleeding. But their leader can't find the source of the attack, trapped by an unseen enemy in the trees. The leader spots a glint of light, pinpointing their attacker's position. She charges forward, ordering her companion Eggle to provide covering fire. A wild, triumphant laugh escapes her lips as she closes in on her target. A man with crossed blades leaps from the trees, impressed by her skill. He smirks, demanding they hand over everything they own, except their money. The story then cuts to a flashback, a grim noose hanging from a branch. A young man argues with a merchant over the outrageous price of a weapon. The merchant scoffs, explaining that supply and demand is a harsh mistress up here. The boy desperately tries to haggle, but the merchant isn't budging an inch. His companion looks on, realizing they'll have to pay the full painful price. But Rahab steps forward, clearing her throat to take over the negotiations herself. She puts on a charming act, asking for a discount for the poor, unskilled rookies with big hearts. The merchant is immediately flustered by her plea, agreeing to lower the price just a little. He offers them the gear for 700 puz, leaving the boys in awe of Rahab's haggling skills. With the deal made, the merchant asks why they look so worn out from the first ruins. Aaron explains that a few days ago, they stumbled upon a nest of bladed flying ants. The merchant takes a nervous drag from his pipe, shocked that such a vicious species was found there. He admits the upper levels are growing more chaotic, having lost contact with other climbers. Sayemo looks concerned, guessing the missing people might have been attacked by a wild beast. Rahab dramatically chimes in, suggesting it could have been a giant monster instead. Aaron's face pales as he wonders if it could be a Nephilim. The merchant takes a drag from his pipe, admitting that monsters are indeed scary. But he warns them that humans are the most dangerous creatures of all. With that ominous advice, the trio continues their journey into the dense woods. Aaron looks around nervously, noting how the thick canopy blocks out the sun. Sayemo agrees, reminding them to stay on guard after the merchant's warning. But Rahab's sharp eyes catch a sudden blur of motion whizzing past. She screams for her friends to duck, her voice filled with sudden panic. Two massive blades slice through the air, aimed directly at the group. Sayemo hits the dirt, letting out a yelp as the weapons fly just over his head. The blades sink deep into the tree, right where Samo's head used to be. He spins around, rifle at the ready, as a voice gloats about finding more prey. A masked figure leaps from the canopy, blades glinting in the dim light. He lands with practiced ease, pinning one of his own weapons with his boot. The man reveals a scarred face and a predatory grin, calling them his next meal. But Rahab's eyes dart around, warning them that this man didn't come alone. Figures emerge from the shadows, revealing the trio is completely surrounded. Well, so much for a quiet walk in the woods. Aaron's face pales, realizing they walked right into a well-laid trap. The bandit leader lets out a wild laugh, pleased that his victims know their fate. Sayemo grits his teeth, realizing these are the raiders the merchant warned them about. Rahab takes stock of their situation, realizing they're too outnumbered to fight through. But Sayemo's mind is already racing, focused on a single desperate objective. He turns to his friend, his voice low as he calls out Aaron's name. Aaron's face fills with dread, understanding the terrible risk in Sayemo's plan. With a flicker in his eye, Aaron reluctantly agrees to the dangerous gambit. Sayemo steps forward, trying to buy them time by asking the raiders their demands. One of the bandits grins, demanding all their gear in exchange for their lives. How generous. The leader adds a chilling caveat. Their boss has special plans for any survivors. With a wild laugh, the bandit leader charges in, eager to start the fight. Sayemo screams the signal, unleashing whatever desperate plan they've concocted. Aaron lets out a guttural cry as strange, vine-like tendrils burst from his body. The bandit leader's shock quickly morphs into a wide, predatory grin. The tendrils form a monstrous exoskeleton, and the bandit realizes he's not hunting a man, but a monster. Aaron is completely consumed by the transformation, becoming a terrifying creature of bone and vine. With a wild laugh, the bandit leader leaps in, thrilled by the prospect of a real fight. His men open fire from the trees, unloading their weapons on the transformed boy. But the bullets just ricochet off Aaron's new impenetrable armor. Guess he's bulletproof now. Sayemo tells Rahab they need to hide before Aaron loses control and turns on them. Rahab can only watch in horror, pleading for her friend to hold on to his humanity. Sayemo lays down covering fire, urging Aaron to endure just a little longer. Aaron unleashes a whirlwind of bladed tendrils, tearing through the clearing. He effortlessly cuts down two of the bandits, sending them flying. Watching from cover, Rahab admits he's pretty reliable when he's on their side. But the bandit leader is too fast, dodging the attack with a taunting grin. The strain of the transformation begins to show as Aaron's bone mask cracks. The leader's smile turns cruel, deciding he'll take the boy's eyes first. But another bandit pulls out a strange, pyramid-shaped artifact on a chain. Sayemo's eyes widen in horrified recognition of the mysterious object. The hooded man activates the device, its chains glowing with an ominous energy. The chains shoot out, ensnaring Aaron's monstrous form in an instant. Well, so much for their secret weapon. The bandit leader lets out a wicked laugh, clearly proud of his little surprise. Aaron roars in agony, his monstrous form struggling against the artifact's power. The bandit reveals the device is a rare artifact, meant to trap monsters in another dimension. The pyramid pulses with a blinding light, its sealing power reaching its peak. With a final clank, the device deactivates, its work seemingly complete. Rahab watches in disbelief, realizing Aaron has been completely neutralized. Samo can only grit his teeth, their desperate plan having failed spectacularly. Completely outmatched, Samo raises his hands, forced to surrender to the bandits. The story cuts away to a blindfolded man, beaten and chained in the dark. Wait, who's this guy? He suddenly looks up, as if sensing a presence he wasn't expecting. The captive, bloodied and blindfolded, demands to know his fate. A chilling voice reveals his companions have already been disposed of. A figure in a metal mask steps forward, confirming the grim news. He explains that humans with brains suitable for fuel are a rare find. The captive can only stammer in confusion, terrified by the cryptic threat. The masked man ignores his pleas, announcing it's time to begin. Mechanical arms descend, their needles poised for some horrific procedure. The captor watches impassively as his victim's screams fill the chamber. Elsewhere, Rahab slams Samo to the ground in a brutal fight. Looks like their captors enjoy a bit of dinner theater. She glares up at their unseen audience, her face a mask of pure rage. Samo tries to make sense of their situation, wondering what the bandits truly want. He knows it can't be for money, as they have next to nothing to steal. Locked away in a grimy cell, he realizes their capture makes no logical sense. Rahab, however, is only focused on one thing: finding out where they've taken Aaron. Elsewhere, the bandit leader proudly presents the pyramid artifact to his superior. A masked figure in a very questionable hat calls the bandit Cheshire, chiding him for being late. But Cheshire just grins, promising he's brought something interesting to make up for it. The artifact suddenly opens, releasing a blinding flash of light and energy. Aaron appears, and Cheshire excitedly reveals the boy's monstrous transformation. The masked leader looks on, his interest clearly piqued by this unexpected prize. The masked leader's eye narrows, questioning if Aaron is both human and artifact. Meanwhile, back in their cell, footsteps echo outside the door. A slot opens, and 2 cans of food are unceremoniously slid inside. Samo recognizes the familiar label of canned metaseed. Rahab looks on, confused as to why their captors are feeding them. A shadowy figure appears at the window, telling them to eat. Samo demands to know their plans, insisting they have no valuable artifacts. But the guard reveals they have no interest in their meager belongings. He tells them to rest, with a chilling promise to break their limbs if they resist. Customer service here is just top-notch. The threat hangs in the air, leaving Samo and Rahab frozen in fear. Forced to eat off the floor, Rahab feels utterly humiliated by their treatment. Samo knows they're on borrowed time, convinced something terrible is planned for them. A sharp piece of his restraints cuts his cheek, a painful reminder of their helplessness. Rahab warns him to be careful, pointing out the razor-sharp edges of their bonds. But her words spark a desperate idea, his gaze shifting from his wound to the can. He begins using the sharp metal lid, slowly and carefully working on his restraints. The two look up in alarm as the sound of footsteps approaches their cell door. But the guards are too late. Samo holds up his freed hands, a plan finally in motion. Elsewhere, Aaron is chained and dragged away, back in his human form but still defiant. Cheshire glares at the struggling boy, his patience clearly wearing thin. The masked leader warns Cheshire not to damage the boy, calling him a valuable source of fuel. Cheshire impatiently asks if they should restart the procedure. A heavy lever is thrown, activating the grim machinery once more. Aaron braces himself as the mechanical arms descend, ready for the worst. But a monstrous vine-like hand erupts from his body, seizing the device. He grits his teeth, his power manifesting to fight back against his captors. Cheshire finally snaps, roaring that he's had enough of the boy's defiance. But the masked leader calmly holds up a hand, ordering his subordinate to stop. He warns that making a scene will waste this golden opportunity. Their true purpose, he reminds him, is to collect fuel for something called a phase shifter. Cheshire reluctantly backs down, admitting his frustration got the better of him. The masked leader muses on the immense energy they could harvest from Aaron. Changing the subject, Cheshire asks about the progress on their topographic map. The leader confirms that their grand project is nearly complete. With a tip of his hat, he offers his subordinate a sneak peek. He places the hat down, revealing it's more than just questionable fashion. The device activates, glowing with a brilliant blue energy. A massive holographic map erupts, detailing the entire structure of the trees. Aaron stares in disbelief, recognizing the impossible scope of their plans. The leader dismisses Aaron's shock, casually calling the map a minor trinket. The leader scoffs, doubting a boy like Aaron has ever seen such a high-grade artifact. Aaron glares back, demanding to know the purpose behind their twisted plans. The leader decides to indulge him, revealing their goal is to reach the summit. He adds another objective, the liberation of Trivania, much to Aaron's shock. He explains the map's grim function. It's fueled by human lives, so that's what they meant by fuel. With this map, he believes they can free Trivania from PR Industries' control. Aaron struggles against his chains, horrified by the man's insane logic. The leader clenches his fist, declaring the map is nearly complete. He tells Aaron to consider his death a noble sacrifice for their revolution. How thoughtful of him. Aaron can only stare in disbelief, questioning their definition of liberation. Aaron screams at the leader, questioning how many innocent people they've sacrificed. But their twisted monologue is cut short as a bandit bursts in with urgent news. He frantically reports that their other two prisoners have somehow escaped. Well, speak of the devils. Elsewhere, Samo and Rahab crawl through a dark, winding ventilation shaft. Samo admits they're unarmed and without a plan, their escape a desperate gamble. But Rahab suddenly silences him, her sharp senses picking up something important. Peering through a grate, they spot a lone figure standing guard below. Rahab realizes they've stumbled upon the bandits' weapon storage room. A glimmer of hope returns to Simo's eyes, a chance to finally fight back. Rahab cracks a confident grin, suggesting one guard shouldn't be too much trouble. Simo flashes a confident grin, telling Rahab to leave the guard to him. The lone bandit turns, alerted by a noise he can't quite place. Simo ambushes him from behind, bringing a rifle butt down on the man's head. He lets out a shaky breath, the silent takedown a success. Rahab lands beside him, giving a silent nod of approval over the fallen guard. Now armed, the two stand ready in the middle of the bandits' armory. But Rahab raises a concern. They still need a way to counter the artifact that trapped Aaron. A chilling voice suddenly echoes, comparing the sound of their escape to scurrying rats. The scraping of a blade against stone grates on their nerves as the voice taunts them. A shadowy figure emerges, promising that hiding from him is completely useless. Well, so much for a stealth mission. The bandit leader's face fills the frame, a predatory grin on his lips as he claims he can smell them. He specifies the scent of woodpeckers, his eyes locking onto their hiding spot. He stalks forward, promising their end will be anything but quick. Gripping his blade, he admits their monster friend has already put him in a foul mood. He dares them to fight back, to struggle for their very survival. The bandit gloats, admitting he finds joy in crushing the hope of the weak. What a charming personality. Hiding behind a crate, Rahab realizes they're facing a truly annoying opponent. But Samo's eyes suddenly widen, a desperate plan forming in his mind. Their hunter is suddenly on top of them, questioning their next move. With a wicked smirk, Cheshire declares that the real fun is just getting started. The masked leader notes Aaron's surprising resilience against the dimensional chains. He explains the artifact should be draining Aaron's strength and consciousness. Aaron struggles against his bonds, admitting to himself that he's reaching his limit. The thought of his brain being used as fuel for their machine keeps him fighting. Cheshire tries to justify his actions, calling Aaron's death a noble sacrifice for the cause. But Aaron's defiant glare shows he's not buying into their twisted ideology. He calls the man a hypocrite, seeing through the self-righteous justifications. The leader's eye narrows, his composure finally cracking at the accusation. Aaron points out the obvious flaw in their logic. They could just leave Trivania. He screams the truth, that they're just as dependent on the metaseed as anyone else. Aaron throws the man's hypocrisy back in his face, calling him a deluded murderer. The leader's rage boils over, and he drives a knife deep into Aaron's chest. Aaron coughs up blood, the brutal attack silencing his defiance for a moment. The masked man leans in, questioning if Aaron truly thinks he's the crazy one. He screams that it's not him, but the world itself that has gone insane. Classic villain monologue. A sudden burst of energy erupts from the holographic map device. The scene cuts away to a dying creature, its life slowly fading. Elsewhere, two explorers stumble upon a glowing artifact of their own. They stare in disbelief, recognizing it as a detailed map of the trees. One of them celebrates, already dreaming of the fortune PR Industries will pay for it. He excitedly tells his friend that with this map, reaching the summit is finally possible. But his companion Ben seems to have second thoughts about their plan. He questions if they couldn't just use the powerful artifact for themselves. Ben argues it would be in their best interest given the comrades they've already lost. But Jonathan reveals the map's dark secret. It requires organic fuel to function. He draws a firm moral line between risking lives and actively sacrificing them. Ben, however, believes that some sacrifices are simply unavoidable for their cause. He pleads with Jonathan to take the map and go back, not wanting their losses to be in vain. Jonathan listens in silence, his expression hardening as he considers their options. With a determined smile, he makes his choice. He will continue to climb no matter the cost. The two friends prepare to part ways, their paths now irrevocably diverged. Ben questions if he should be the one to keep the powerful, dangerous artifact, but Jonathan refuses it, vowing to reach the summit on his own terms. He wishes his friend a safe journey down as he continues his climb alone. With a final smile, he promises they'll meet again as friends someday. Ben returns the sentiment, a bittersweet farewell between two former comrades. The story jumps forward 3 years, to a grim scene of slaughter. Ben screams in frustration, surrounded by the terrible cost of his ambition. The map is still hungry, its progress barely a fraction of what he needs. So much for taking the moral high ground. But his grim work is interrupted by a sudden, unexpected knock at the door. A voice from the darkness calls out for Ben, claiming to know his secrets. Surrounded by the bloody cost of his ambition, Ben looks up in pure terror. The door slams open, revealing an agent of PR Industries and his hulking enforcer. The agent Saul calmly explains they're here to arrest him for hiding a mythic artifact. Ben's face drains of color, the reality of being caught finally sinking in. The brute Tusk notes the overwhelming stench of blood and decay in the room. Ben desperately tries to explain away the bodies, claiming it was all for research. But Saul isn't interested, clarifying they don't care what he did with the artifact. Guess he's not here for a science fair. He instead labels Ben a rebel, leaving the terrified man utterly confused. With a cruel smile, Saul sentences him to a place called Camp Mizraim for defying Lord Ramez.